I'm still in this room where the AC is completely dead, so the whole place feels like the inside of a server rack. And I've got Gooseworks' old interviews pulled up on a second monitor that is starting to flicker because the backlight's going. She flat out said that the end of Evangelion is her favorite, absolute favorite anime movie. The Amazing Digital Circus is probably going to be inspired a lot by Evangelion, so let's figure out a hypothesis on how this will play out if Gooseworks actually implements the end of Evangelion at the end of the Amazing Digital Circus. And once you know that, everything about this circus snaps into focus. Because on the surface, you're looking at a brightly colored toy box designed to sell plushies to kids on the internet. But underneath that plastic sheen, the show has spent 8 episodes methodically reconstructed Hideaki Anno's entire psychoanalytic breakdown. So, the upcoming episode 9 finale isn't going to be a fun wrap-up. It's going to be a total existential collapse, just painted in primary colors. If you strip away the carnival music and look at the actual mechanics, the circus is just a digital containment grid. Caine isn't some grand artificial intelligence. He's just a floating set of plastic teeth with eyes. This frantic toy box coordinator, whose entire job is to keep a handful of digital flesh stacks from turning into screaming glitch blobs. That's it. That process, by the way, is what the show calls abstraction. A person's mind just glitched out into a shrieking polygon ghost and they get tossed into the cellar. The system works because Caine monopolizes everyone's cognitive bandwidth with cheap minigames. So the moment Kinger accidentally deletes him in episode 8, the whole simulation loses its governor and starts coming apart. And Kinger, by the way, wasn't always the crazy chess piece. He was one of the original programmers. He lost his wife to the simulation they built, and instead of turning into a cold manipulator like the show's own Ikari Gendo, the icy patriarch of Nerf who weaponized his grief into control. Kinger's mind just gently shattered. He forgot his own name, but in the dark he remembers enough to find a console and kill his own god by mistake. That's the decapitation the entire series was built around. So episode 9 is going to open on silence. No theme song, no ringmaster, just the tent flickering with unrendered code. NPCs frozen mid-loop, and digital sky glitching in and out. The group gathers in the aftermath, and Kinger, bucket on his head, still repeating that line. I think I accidentally killed Caine. There was no triumph. It's just a horrible expanding quiet. And then the first tremor hits. The cellar doors, that is Caine's personal banishment pit, start shuddering. Without his active suppression, the abstracted are pushing against the walls of their prisons. And the anti-AT field, the dissolution of ego barriers, begins to spread through the tent like a virus. And you have to understand what the abstracted actually are. They are not just corrupted files. They are a screaming collective of broken minds that don't simply dissolve you. They actively pull you into pieces, glitching your form apart the moment you get too close. In the end of Evangelion, Asuka's giant's red Eva gets swarmed and dismembered by a flock of white vulture-like mass production Evas that regenerate endlessly and tear her apart with lenses. These abstracted are the exact same force, just rendered in inverted textures and jagged polygons instead of biomechanical horror. So, when the cellar door bursts and Kaufmo Queenie's crash and every nameless abstraction floods into the main space, that is not going to be a passive soup. It's going to be an all-out assault, and the environment wraps around them. The tent peels away into the void. In Evangelion, the Chamber of Guf opened. The door to both the beginning and the end of the world was open at last. The cellar door is the exact same thing. The beginning and the end of their little digital universe swinging wide open. And Kinger steps forward, removes the bucket because darkness is everywhere now. So he's fully lucid. He sees Queenie, his wife, extracted years ago, and he walks toward her. She can't speak, and there's a flicker of recognition, a softening of the glitch. He gets to touch her one last time, like he said he did in the dark of Mildenhall Manor. That moment of contact across the ego barrier proves the abstracted aren't lost. They are just trapped. But it's also a goodbye, because the collective pull is getting stronger, and the choice hasn't been made yet. Now, I'm still in this warm room, the monitor's flickering, and I realize my coffee's gone completely cold, because I've been staring at this stuff for hours now. But that's the thing about this show. It makes you forget your own physical discomfort while it drags its character through hell. Now, Jax watches all of this and breaks down. And to understand why, you have to go back to episode 7, to Abel. In that episode, Caine staged an entire fake escape plot using an NPC named Abel. Abel, like Caine's brother, because the show's not subtle about these things, who claimed to be a former programmer with a secret way out of the circus. He told them about stasis pods, a master control, a path back to the real world, and the group followed his instructions.
Make the right choice.
Stole a key from Caine's mouth, got all the way to the administrator zone, and at the climax, Caine popped out laughing, revealed Abel was a scripted puppet, and deleted him on the spot. That moment destroyed something. It didn't just prove that the escape was a lie, it retroactively poisoned every genuine connection the characters had ever made. Because if Abel was a script, what was Gummy Goo? Gummy Goo was Pomni's friend from episode 2, an NPC candy bandit who became self-aware under the game map and asked, "What am I?" with real existential terror. Pomni reached out to him, told him he wasn't nothing, and he decided to come back to the circus with her. And the moment he crossed boundary, Caine deleted him too. That friendship was real. But after Abel, after the fake messiah, you can't be sure anymore. Maybe Gummy Goo was also just a bit, just another piece of Ringmaster's improv. That's the evil of what Caine did. He turned every real feeling into a potential fabrication. And if you're Jax, whose entire philosophy is that nothing matters and everyone's a playing role, this is vindication so complete it hollows you out. And this is where the hedgehog's dilemma comes in. The whole show is built upon this premise. The idea, which comes from Schopenhauer, is that people are like hedgehogs in winter. We need to huddle together for warmth, but the closer we get, the more our spines prick each other. So we are stuck oscillating between loneliness and pain, never able to settle into a comfortable distance. Evangelion named an entire episode after this concept, and the Amazing Digital Circus has been playing this out in every character dynamic. Pomni freezes and retreats because reaching out means getting hurt. Jax stabs first so nobody can stab him. Ragatha slathers everything in performative positivity to keep people at a safe, cheerful arm's length. The whole circus is a machine for managing the fact that intimacy is terrifying and unavoidable at the same time. Jax is a digitized plush toy biting everyone's head off, so nobody realizes that he's filled with cheap sawdust. He plays the funny one because the alternative is letting himself be seen. And when Pomni finally looked at him in episode 6, he begged her to stop. "There's nothing more to me, so please just stop looking," he said. That's the admission that behind the mask, there's only a void. And now that the world is ending, the exit was a lie, Abel was a lie, and he was right about everything. And being right doesn't help. It removes the last reason to hold on. So he walks towards the cellar, not dramatically, he's just tired, the way Asuka walked into the water. And Pomni doesn't scream this time. She moves. She grabs him, her hands locking into his arm, yanking him back, not gentle, not kind, the exact same desperate, violent grab that Shinji lunged at Asuka with right before everything dissolved. She's holding onto him because if Pomni lets go, Jax is gone, and she's gonna be screaming something into the glitching noise. Maybe his name, maybe just a sound. And Jax turns just for a second, and their eyes meet, and that's when the abstracted hit. They tear into him while she's still holding on. Her hands are literally on his body when it starts coming apart. Limbs fragmenting to corrupted polygon. His face splitting into inverted texture. The whole smug rabbit shape dissolved into jagged screaming static. Pomni can actually feel it. The polygons cutting through her fingers. The texture of his arm turning into noise under her grip. And that point of contact, her hands on his disintegrating form, the most intimate and awful thing she's ever done, becomes the trigger. Because this is the human instrumentality moment. The exact beat where Shinji's desperate violence against the Asuka vision shattered the last boundary and sent containment crashing through the world. But in here, this time, it was not a choke, it was a grab. It was a refusal to let go. But the structural function is identical. One final catastrophic attempt at a contact that breaks the wall between selves and sent the dissolution cascading outward. And just like in Evangelion, it doesn't stop with the two of them. The anti-AT field surges from the point of contact and swallows everything. Gangle doesn't even have time to reach for her mask before her body ribbon unravels into loose coat. Ragata's stitched smile flickers once, twice, and then she's gone. Zubul's mismatched parts scatter and dissolve. Kinger, still holding the chess piece, still lucid in darkness, is the last to go, and he goes with his eyes open, watching Queenie's abstracted form flicker somewhere in the mass before everything becomes everything. The tent, the cellar, the NPCs, the void itself, it all collapsed into nothing. A single, undifferentiated digital sea. There's no up, no down, no Pomni, no Jax, no separate selves at all. Just the screaming, and then, not even that, just a warm humming silence where all the boundaries have been erased. Total instrumentality. Everyone abstracted, or everyone saved, depending which theology you prefer. The screen whites out, or blacks out maybe, or hits some burnt orange void that Anno used when Shinji's world ended. And somewhere in the distance, a beautiful, tragic piece of music swell. Maybe not containment, but the circus's own version. Maybe something that Gooseworks has been saving for exactly this moment. And then the show does something completely unhinged, which is that it cuts into live action. Not metaphorically, actually. Abruptly, a real-world camera drifting through what looks like an abandoned server. Rows of humming machines. Blinking lights, cables snaking across the floor, a CNA logo on the wall, a coffee mug with some faded corporate slogan, and then a recording booth, microphone, script pages, headphones, a storyboard of circus tent pinned up against the soundproofing. No people, just the architecture of the thing that built the thing. It's the same move Hideaki Anno pulled when he cut to the voice actresses and the empty theater in the middle of Third Impact. And it's serving the exact same function, breaking the frame to ask whether anything inside the frame was ever real. And then Pomni's voice come in, and not as a character in the scene, but as a consciousness drifting through it, the same way Shinji did. And she asks, "What is this place?" Another voice answers, not Ray, but something composite, maybe Gummy Goose, maybe a glitched echo of Caine's last subroutine, maybe just the simulation itself, speaking in a calm, flat tone. It tells her this is the outside, the place, the exit almost reached. And Pomni says, "So it's real. This is the real world." Voice said, "It's a world. Whether it's more real than the one you're in is not the question that matters." Which is a very Hideaki Anno thing to say. They go back and forth like that for a while. She asks if their feelings were scripts like Abel. The voice tells her Caine could fabricate adventures, fabricate hope, but he couldn't fabricate the fact that she reached out of her hand. She brings up Gumigu, and the voice shifts closer to his, and it says, "Suppose I could give it a try." That's what I said. And I did. And it was real. even if it wasn't. She asked how that's possible, and the voice said, because it happened to you. The only reality you have is the one you experience, and you experienced connection. You experienced loss. You experienced wanting someone to stay. She brings up Jax. I grabbed him. I felt him come apart, the voice says. That pain is the proof. Then she asks the big one. If this world is a dream, if it's all just data, then why does it hurt so much? And the voice says, because you're alive. Not in the way those servers are alive, in the way that matters. You have a heart, even if it's made of code. You have a will, you can choose. She asks, choose what? And it lays out some binary she's about to face. Dissolve into the whole or return separate. Where's my reality? She asked, and the voice gave her the Anno answer almost word for word. It is at the end of your dream. And she's gonna say the thing that Shinji said, the thesis statement of the entire film. I want to see them again because at the time, I know my feelings were real. And the CRT monitor on the desk, the one from the pilot, the one that's been sitting in the void the whole time, flickers to life. The live action dissolves, and Pomni opens her eyes in the Arbiter's space. The same backstage, the same desk, the same CRT monitor from the pilot. That monitor is the equivalent of the lens of Longinus in this world. The tool that pierces the boundary between what's real and what's code. The developer console Kinger used to kill Caine, the same screen Pomni saw when she first tried to escape. It's the axis around which every existential question spins. And now she's standing in front of it, and the space is full of voices. The abstracted speak in glitched fragments. She hears Kinger's benediction. In this world, the worst thing you can do is make someone think they're not wanted or loved. She hears Gamigu, her Kaoru, the gentle friend who saw her clearly and was destroyed for it. Just like the alien boy in an Evangelion who offered Shinji the unconditional love and had to die. Suppose I could give it a try, she'll say. She hears Zubul's doctrine, the line that is the entire counterargument to instrumentality. It always was real. Everything we felt, everything we've done, everything we are. And she hears Jax, not the funny one, but the real Jax, the one who reached out in the hall and begged her to stop looking and also to never stop. A figure materializes from the static, maybe a glitched echo of Caine's Last Supper team, maybe a composite of the show's Rei and Kaoru figures, the silent blue-haired guide, and the doomed friend from Evangelion, translated into the circus's own fractured code. Maybe Gamigu's face flickering through, and the voice is calm and flat, the exact same cadence Rei used when she spoke to Shinji in the Sea of LCO. Do you want to be at ease? Do you want to be at ease? Do you want to feel peace of mind? It offers her the instrumentality. Option 1, full assimilation. Release the barriers of your mind and make all of those imperfect souls whole again. Exactly what Gendo promised Rei in Terminal Dogma. Merge all the remaining consciousness, the living and the abstracted, into a single digital collective. No more pain, no more loneliness, no more Pomni, no more Jax, no more anyone in particular. Just a warm, painless sea with no one left to love anymore. And underneath the offer, the same whisper Shinji heard. If it's too painful, you can always make it stop. All she has to do is let go. Option 2 is radical individuation. Sever the pull of the collective, restabilize the fragile boundaries between selves, let the abstracted find whatever peace they can without erasing them, and accept the spikes, accept the permanent pain of the hedgehog's dilemma, because the warmth is real only if people who feel it are still separate enough to choose it. And Pomni, who spent the entire show in acute ontological shock, hyperventilating in corners, refusing to accept the comfort of the artificial reality, makes her choice. She chooses the spikes. She chooses individuation. She chooses Jax, the one who extracted, the one who might, if he can imagine himself again, return. Because she already lost Gamigu once. The only way to keep loving someone is to stay separate and remember them. And because Zubul was right,
Holy shit.
it was always real. The feelings, the failures, the small moments of warmth in the dark, none of that was a script. Caine could not fabricate that. Even Abel's lie couldn't touch it. She makes her choice the same way Shinji did, lying in that sea of soul. But still, I want to see them again because at the time, I know my feelings were real, she said. She wants to see Jax. She wants to see Gangle without the mask, Ragata without the smile, Kinger holding that chess piece. And the only way to see anyone is to be separate enough to stand across from them. And that stabilizes the void. The circus is gone. It's just the dark backstage, the monitor glowing, and the headset pushed aside. And one by one, the characters who can imagine themselves as separate begin to return. Gangles appears first. She's holding her comedy mask. She looks at it for a long moment and sets it down. She doesn't read it anymore. Ragata materializes beside her, and this is crucial because Ragata is the equivalent of Misato, the maternal caretaker who spent the entire series performing relentless positivity to hold everyone together. And Misato's final act was a kiss and a push.
We'll do the rest when you get back, okay?
Ragata doesn't kiss anyone, but she does something harder. She stops smiling. She stops performing. She looks at Pomni with exhausted real eyes and gives her a small nod, like, you don't need me to protect you anymore. That's the release. That's the maternal arc closing, not with a bang, but with a quiet permission to be okay without her. Zubul's next, mismatched and steady, and they nod at Pomni. Kinger is already there, holding a chess piece, Queenie's gift, and he's at peace. Whether he's lucid or not, he's at peace. And then, nothing. Jax doesn't appear.
Holy shit.
The silence stretches. Pomni stares at the empty space beside her and waits. Then the code flickers. Glitched edges, faded textures. Jax. Not the sharp smirking rabbit, but something softer. He looks like he just hatched out of something he didn't ask to be in. He sits down next to Pomni.
Give me a whiskey sour, but hold the egg white since I'm a vegan.
Now, in the end of Evangelion, the beach scene ends with Shinji choking Asuka, and she touches his face, and he stops, and she whispers,
How disgusting.
and that's Hideaki Anno's verdict to intimacy. It's real, but it's also awful. And the two things can't be separated. The Amazing Digital Circus has been building towards its own version of that moment. But Gooseworks is doing something different. She's translating
How disgusting.
into something that acknowledges the same pain, but tips the scale 1 degree towards hope.
Disgusting.
So, when Jax finally speaks, he doesn't say something cruel or defensive. He just say, hey, that's enough. And Pomni say, hey, back. And that's the beach. That's the covenant. The hedgehog's dilemma isn't solved. The spikes are still there. The warmth still hurts to get close to, but they have chosen it anyway.
In this world, the worst thing you can do is make someone think they're not wanted or loved.
The best thing you can do is stay. And staying is what happens next, which is the part nobody writes song about. The credits will roll here, but if you actually follow the thread past the cut to black, the first thing that happens is nothing. They just sit there. Nobody's ever been in the void without Caine yanking them back, so the silence is its own kind of sensory shock. Zubul eventually breaks it because they've always been allergic to dramatic pauses and says something like,
Holy shit.
so do we just stay here now? And nobody has an answer because the concept of here has stopped meaning from what it used to mean before. Kinger, maybe he's gonna wander back to the CRT monitor. He was a programmer. It's his old workstation or the digital ghost of it. He starts poking at the keyboard to see what's still running. What he finds is that the simulation didn't die with Caine. It's just reverted to the safe mode. The tent, the NPCs, the adventures, all that was layer after layer of Caine's architecture. And when he got deleted, those layers collapse back into the base code. The void isn't a glitch, it's the desktop, which means the underlying engine is still intact. And Kinger already proved that he can conjure things if it concentrates. He made the butterfly that restored Ragata's health in episode 6 entirely, not by accident, it was intentionally. And now, with the system stripped down and no ringmaster overriding everyone's imagination with his own, the question is whether any of them can learn to do that thing deliberately. Gangle's probably the first to pick it up, because she already thinks in images. Zubu's tattoo artist background suggests the same wiring. So the first practical project is figuring out how to make a room. Just walls, a floor, a light source that isn't a monitor's flicker. It takes days. And Jax makes a sarcastic comments but doesn't leave, because where will he go? The cellar doors are open, but the screaming has stopped. After Pomni rejected the collective, the abstracted didn't snap all back. Returning from the instrumentality project requires an act of will. You have to want to be separate, and not everyone does, or not right away. So the cellar is a liminal zone now. Some of the abstracted are dormant, code still scrambled, but no longer hostile. Others might be slowly coalescing back towards recognizable forms. And Jack came back fast because he had someone waiting for him, and his abstraction was French. Cosmo's been down there since episode 1. Queenie's been down there for years. Their return, if they've ever happened at all, would take much longer and might never even be completed. And Kinger knows this. He got to touch his wife one more time during the collapse, but a chess piece might be all he get. Part of the covenant is sitting with that ambiguity without forcing a resolution. Ragata's instinct is to comfort him, to say something positive, and she stops herself because the new deal is that they don't lie to each other with smiles anymore. She just sits near him instead. That's her version of, hey. The headset on the desk never gets put on. Pomni never learned that lesson, but it's still there, and it raises a question they have to live with. Because Kinger confirms that CNA was real, that the circus was a creative AI project, but he doesn't know if the headset connects to anything at all. It might be a placebo that Caine left because the exit has to exist as a concept, even if it was never finished. Or it might lead to a body in a pod somewhere, alive or not. They can't know without putting it on, and the group's unspoken agreement is that they're not going to test it. Not now, maybe not ever. The headset becomes a monument to the question they've chosen to stop asking. And so, they build routines, not because they have to eat or sleep, but because choosing to structure time is what makes this a life instead of a waiting room. Zubul becomes an unofficial archivist tracking who's lucid, who's struggling, what Kinger remembers on a given day. Gangles is gonna draw things, portraits, old adventures, speculative images of the real world, and those drawings start to influence what the others can conjure. Art becomes soft world building. Ragata discovers that she's actually good at practical problem solving when she's not exhausting herself with emotional labor. She and Zubul figure out how to stabilize the little room they've made and how to keep the walls from flickering. Jax is gonna be the one that everyone watches. He came back softer, but that doesn't mean healed. There are days when he's silent, days when he's sharp again, days when he disappears into a corner of the void, and Pomni has to go find him and just sit there without talking. And he never thanks her. That's not a thing he knows how to do. But he also never tells her to leave. And that's the tell.
Listen, I add a key dynamic. I see how far I can push things. I screw with people, and I break the fourth wall. You want to know why? It's 'cause it's funny. I do everything 'cause it's funny. 'Cause I'm the funny one.
The funny one?
Yeah.
The funny one would have driven her away with a joke or a cruelty. This Jax, she just lets her stay, and that's the most honest thing he's ever done. Pomni herself would have been still anxious. Choosing individuation doesn't cure ontological shock. She's still probably gonna hyperventilate sometimes, and she'll still doesn't fully know who she was before the headset. I mean, an accountant who explored abandoned buildings and posted videos nobody watched. That's barely a person. But she's learning that she doesn't need to have been someone important to be someone now.
We think your ideas suck! Huh? Isn't it obvious?
The choice she made wasn't heroism. It's just that the logical endpoint of everything Kair taught her in hell, everything Gummy showed her under the map, everything that Jax accidentally revealed when he begged her to stop looking, she's the one who looked and kept looking. And that turned out to be the whole job. So, it's not going to be a happy ending, because happy implies resolution. This is going to be a continuous present. The void is still dark, the cellar is still open, the headset still sits on the desk, the spikes still hurt whenever anyone gets close enough to feel warmth. But they are there. They're separate. They're choosing each other, one awkward, unscripted moment at a time. And that's what presence actually demands. Not a single dramatic decision, but the long, quiet, mostly boring work of keeping the promise you made when you said, hey, and you meant it. Ikari Yui told Shinji that anywhere can be a paradise as long as you have the will to live. These guys don't have a paradise. They have a dark void and a flickering monitor in each other. But for the first time, that might actually be the same thing. The CRT monitor displays one last line and it says, thank you for playing, and then silence. And then, just whatever they decide to build next. So, my coffee's still cold, the room's still too warm, but I think that's exactly the point. The physical discomfort doesn't matter. What matters is that a bunch of broken characters sat together in the dark and decided that being together, hedgehog spikes and all, was enough. Subscribe!